All right, welcome back. Hope you all had a great weekend and a happy Father's Day if you celebrated. Today, we're continuing our review of our latest RBT exam, where we're going through a set of RBT exam questions and breaking them down together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for all of our study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 full practice exams, a task list study guide, and our combo pack. It's our best deal. Other than that, any questions you have, please email me or leave a comment below. Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. A Fr1 reinforcement schedule is also known as a blank schedule. This question can be a little confusing because we use it interchangeably, and the exam might use it interchangeably. So when we talk about an Fr1 reinforcement schedule, what does that mean? What is Fr1? Well, we know F is fixed, meaning it's unchanging. We know the R stands for ratio, so it's based on a number of responses. And the 1 is telling us how many responses are needed in order to gain reinforcement. So if we have an Fr1 schedule, we have a schedule that's fixed, and every single response is going to earn reinforcement. So Fr1 is typically used to teach skills. A lot of reinforcement is given very quickly and immediately for engaging in the behavior we want to see. It's also known as what? Is this an intermittent reinforcement schedule? It is not. An Fr1 is the only schedule that isn't intermittent. Okay. An Fr1 is known as a continuous reinforcement schedule, a CRF. Why is that? Well, because we're continuously reinforcing every single instance of behavior. Intermittent means we aren't, right? That could be an Fr2, an Fr6, an Fr100, a VR100. Every other schedule other than Fr1 schedule is an intermittent reinforcement schedule. But an Fr1 schedule is known as a continuous reinforcement schedule. There's no such thing as a constant reinforcement schedule. And then it's not based on any sort of time, right? And you would use an interval reinforcement schedule, not a timed. Interval is when we give reinforcement based on a time. Here, we're doing it based on a response. Every single response is getting reinforced. We're continuously reinforcing it. An Fr1 schedule is also known as a continuous reinforcement schedule. Of the following answer choices, which of the following is not part of a good behavior definition? A lot of behavior definition questions lately. Okay, we want to be sure as RBTs, we understand what makes a good behavior definition, right? Even though you won't necessarily be creating the final definition always, you should be assisting in what that definition is, because typically, as the RBT, you're going to be the first one to witness that behavior. So you need to define it. What makes a good behavior definition? Well, we want it to be observable, meaning we can see it occur over and over again. We want it to be measurable. If we can't measure it, okay, we can't change it, so it has to be measurable. And it has to be objective, meaning we don't give our feelings, we don't give our opinions. We just say, this is what happened, this is what it looked like, end of discussion. That being said, the question wants to know which of the following is not part of a good behavior definition. So objectivity, we just went through it. Objectivity, we want to be objective. We want to just write what happened. Measurability, if we can't measure it, we can't change it. Has to be measurable. Observability, you have to be able to see it occur. Subjectivity is not part of a good behavior definition. We don't want to be subjective. We want to be objective. Question 3. Christina is looking for a new dessert to add to her menu. She has her assistant pastry chef bring her out all 5 desserts. She takes a bite of each and picks her favorite and removes it from the table. She does this until there are no desserts left. What type of preference assessment is this? It's very easy to discriminate between preference assessments on the RBT exam. The main thing you need to ask yourself, am I looking at a single stimulus? Am I looking at 2 stimuli at a time? Or am I looking at 3 or more stimuli at a time? If it's a single stimulus, okay, it's going to be a single stimulus preference assessment. If we're doing just 2 stimuli at a time, it's always going to be forced choice or paired choice. If we're doing 3 or more, then it has to be multiple stimulus or free operant, okay? Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be free operant, but when we talk about a free operant preference assessment, we're not manipulating anything. We're just watching the person in their natural environment. And the environment is typically going to have more than 2 stimuli. In this case, how many stimuli are we working with? Well, we know her assistant pastry chef brings out 5 desserts. She takes a bite of each, right? And they're all in an array. So we're examining all 5 at once. It can't be forced choice. Why? Well, we said forced choice has to be just 2 stimuli at a time. It can't be free operant because this is contrived. We are arranging these stimuli, these potential preference assessment stimuli in a way, right, that's very contrived. Okay. We're not just watching Christina in her natural habitat. So it's not free operant, it's not forced choice. We know it's more than 3, so it's going to be some sort of multiple stimulus. Now, is it multiple stimulus with replacement or without? Without is easier to remember because it's exactly what it sounds like. Whatever stimulus is chosen is removed from the array and is not replaced. In this case, she takes a bite of all the desserts. She picks her favorite and removes it from the table, meaning now there's only 4 desserts. Eats another dessert, down to 3. Eats another, down to 2. Eats another, down to 1. What type of preference assessment is this? Well, we're examining multiple stimuli at a time and not replacing them. So it's going to be multiple stimulus without replacement. If the question said she picked her favorite dessert and then she replaced it and replaced the other 4 desserts, now we're talking about multiple stimulus with replacement. That's the key distinction. That's the hardest part, I think, of preference assessments. Understanding the difference between a multiple stimulus with replacement and without. Everybody knows forced choice. It's the most obvious one. It's the one we use all the time. Everyone knows single choice. Understand multiple stimulus with and without replacement. Your BCBA asks you to observe and record everything that happens before the target behavior occurs. What are you recording? What is the key word here? You are observing and recording everything that happens before the target behavior occurs. Now think about our contingency, our ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence. Things that happen right before the behavior are considered what? Well, clearly, antecedents. Consequences happen after the behavior. We're not probing anything, and we're not doing preferences. We are just observing and recording everything that happens before the target behavior occurs. Probably some sort of ABC recording, trying to determine, okay, what are the environmental effects before and after this behavior happens. Knowing the antecedents, right, we can start to manipulate the environment to try and prevent this behavior from occurring. But in order to do that, we, or you as the RBT, have to record whatever happens right before the behavior occurs. And as we know, ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence, antecedents are what happens before the behavior occurs. James is a good student, but will often fall asleep. He thinks it is funny when the teacher has to wake him up. Now, the teacher will either praise James or give him attention every 4 minutes, no matter what. The teacher is most likely attempting what? What is the question asking about? There's a lot of different parts and pieces to this question. We want to know, because the question is asking us about the teacher. What is the teacher attempting? So let's figure out what the teacher is doing. So we know James falls asleep because he thinks it's funny that the teacher has to wake him up. Most likely the function of this behavior is, well, probably attention, right? He gets attention from the teacher when she wakes him up. So the teacher decided she's going to praise James or give him attention every 4 minutes, no matter what. Now, that no matter what is very important because what does that specify? What does that clarify? What that specifies is this reinforcement is not contingent upon anything James is doing. No matter what, every 4 minutes, she's going to give James attention. The idea is we're going to manipulate the motivating operation for attention and falling asleep. If we can give James enough attention, maybe he won't need to fall asleep in order to gain more attention. Now, the key here is that non-contingent part, right? Contingent reinforcement means what? It means there's a contingency. There's an if-then. If James does this, then James gets reinforcement. That is a contingency. When we're delivering non-contingent reinforcement, it's not a consequence. It's an antecedent. It doesn't matter what's going on at that time. The reinforcement is not contingent upon anything. You must deliver it. If you're ever in a situation where you're delivering non-contingent reinforcement, you have to be very sure you understand the procedure. One ethical consideration with non-contingent reinforcement, you can easily reinforce the wrong behavior because you're supposed to give it no matter what. Now, what if the client is misbehaving during this 4 minutes? That's something you need to talk about with your supervisor. Okay. Anyway, so what is the teacher most likely attempting? Well, non-contingent reinforcement. It's not positive punishment and it's not negative punishment. Yes, we want to decrease this behavior, but this isn't a consequence intervention. The teacher isn't reacting to James falling asleep. She's not changing how she reacts to it. This is occurring before James falls asleep. That's the entire point. It's non-contingent, attempting to manipulate the EMOs. Positive punishment and negative punishment are consequences that occur after the behavior. If we wanted to explain positive punishment to a parent, which of the following explanations would be best? Now, why would the test ask you a question like this? What's the purpose of this question? Well, you might be thinking, well, I'm an RBT. I'm not going to be training parents. True. But if in casual conversation, a parent asks you, what is positive punishment? You should be able to answer that. Okay. You should be able to tell them what positive punishment is. And the reason the test might ask you something like this is because they want you to talk to parents without using jargon and without using technical language. You need to talk to parents in a way that you might explain to your best friend what we do. Someone who knows nothing about ABA. What is positive punishment? How are you going to describe that? So A, we're going to start adding and removing things to try and decrease the behavior. What's wrong with this? Well, we're trying to decrease the behavior, so it's punishment, but it also says we're adding and removing things. With positive punishment, we are adding something to decrease the behavior, not removing. A is out. B, we're going to start adding minutes to the clock, which will hopefully decrease the behavior. Okay, looks a lot better, right? Decrease the behavior is punishment. We're adding minutes, so it's positive. This looks like positive punishment to me, said in a way that makes sense to anybody. Okay, yes, by adding these minutes, hopefully the behavior decreases. This is considered positive punishment. What about C? Each time the behavior occurs, remove a star. This will help decrease the behavior. Again, punishment, but this first sentence, you're removing something, meaning it's negative. Not positive, negative. And then D, punishment will help decrease the behavior while teaching your son what to do instead. Does punishment teach a replacement behavior? It does not. Punishment needs to be part of a treatment package. So D is just false. If we're going to explain positive punishment to a parent, B is going to be by far the best one. We're going to add minutes, positive, to decrease the behavior, punishment, positive punishment. Sam wants to stop drinking coffee. He decides he is going to unplug his coffee machine so that when he turns it on, nothing happens. For the next week, Sam tries to turn on his coffee machine each morning by pushing the button harder and harder. This is considered a what? You may have seen this question before if you've been with me a long time. I think it's a good indication because we can relate, right? Same thing with your car not starting. When your car doesn't start or your computer doesn't start, you try to push the button harder and harder until you give up. What's occurring there? What is occurring with Sam? The coffee machine's unplugged. Nothing's happening when he turns it on. And he continues to try to turn it on by pushing the button harder and harder, even though nothing is happening. What does that sound like? What do we call it when a previously reinforced behavior, such as turning his machine on, no longer gets reinforcement? The machine no longer turns on. Well, this is a great example of extinction. Sam's behavior is inadvertently on extinction. He did it to himself, right? He just forgot, right? Or he did it to himself, right? He wanted to stop drinking coffee, so he unplugged the coffee machine. So when it turns on, nothing happens, okay? He no longer receives reinforcement for trying to turn on this machine. So what is the actual behavior, though? Because we're looking at Sam trying to turn on the coffee machine by doing the behavior harder and harder, increasing intensity, increasing in frequency. So when we put a behavior on extinction and it causes that behavior to temporarily increase before it decreases, it's called what? Well, it's considered an extinction burst, right? This is a classic extinction burst. Sam's behavior is on extinction, so it temporarily increases. Eventually, he's no longer going to push that button. It's not resistance to extinction, okay? That resistance to extinction indicates how long it takes for the behavior to go extinct. It's not spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery happens after extinction is successful. And there's no such thing as a frustration burst. We would never describe it as frustration. It's not observable. It's not measurable. This behavior that Sam is exhibiting is considered an extinction burst. Which of the following is not a type of discontinuous measurement? I'm always going to ask these type of questions. We need to be very, very good at measurement. We don't want to miss measurement questions on our exam. These are the easy questions. These are the layups. These are the easy points. Which of the following is not a type of discontinuous measurement? In your head, you should be able to say continuous measurement is frequency, rate, duration, latency, interresponse time. Discontinuous measurement is whole interval recording, partial interval recording, and momentary time sampling, also play check. And then we have permanent product. You need to be able to do those lists in your head. It makes this question very easy. Which is not discontinuous measurement? Is momentary time sampling discontinuous? It sure is. Is whole interval recording discontinuous? It absolutely is. Is interresponse time discontinuous? It's not. We just did our list. Interresponse time is considered continuous measurement. And then finally, partial interval is also discontinuous. This is a very simple question. Don't miss the easy ones. And finally, Josh walks to the store with his client. The client's mom gave them a list of groceries to buy for the house. Josh engages his client in conversation and observes as the client picks out the groceries. At one point, the client cannot find an item, so Josh asks his client what he can do. Josh is using what type of teaching? As an RBT, for the RBT exam, we need to know two major types of teaching. We need to know discrete trial teaching, and we need to know naturalistic teaching. Naturalistic teaching is also known as incidental teaching. With DTT, what are we doing? We're contriving scenarios where we're giving SDs, feedback, delivering a lot of reinforcement, a lot of consequences rapidly, a lot of prompts rapidly. It's a very rapid and contrived, meaning control type of teaching. Naturalistic incidental, we're just looking for naturally occurring situations to use to our benefit. If Josh is going through all this trouble to walk to the store with the client, engaging his client in casual conversation, watching the client pick out groceries, using the opportunity when the client cannot find an item to teach him what he can do, he's clearly doing what? He's not doing DTT. He's not delivering a bunch of SDs followed by feedback, followed by more SDs, right? It's just a casual trip to the grocery store, which Josh is using to his advantage. It's actually a great way to teach. Josh is using naturalistic teaching. It's not task chaining. We're not completing task chains here. And it's not shaping because we're not shaping anything. The two major umbrellas you need to know: discrete trial teaching, naturalistic teaching. Discrete trial, very contrived, typically happens at the table, very common for teaching behavior. Naturalistic teaching occurs in the natural environment typically. We use opportunities to teach real life necessary skills. Josh is using naturalistic teaching. Okay, thanks for watching. Please check out rbtexamreview.com. 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and our combo pack, which is our best deal. As always, any questions, comments, let me know. Like and subscribe. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.